Welcome to the Cedarshed factory. We're back with another install guide for the metal roof. We got Jason and Kevin here to give us a hand once again. Step one is identifying all the parts for your metal roof kit. We have the metal roof install guide and the model specific. We're using a Rancher 8x10 for this, but this is applicable for any shed with a metal roof. It's the same strategies. We're going to start with the panel layout here. We have all the different roof panels in the diagram, and we have the sizes here. So we know we have two 005s and a sandwich panel 006. If you have other sheds, you might have extra panels. We just want to lay them out so we know where they're going to install. Your roof panels are going to look like this, some 2x3 with 1x4 strapping. According to the manual, they're 42 3/4 wide for the 05s. On the metal roof, they're 42 inches because once you add a 3/4 inch fascia, it makes it 42 3/4. So if they're measuring 42, that's correct. Once you put your fascia on, it'll be 42 3/4. We have a sandwich panel for 46.5 in the middle. And then we have one more panel again on the end. That's 42. On the panels on the end, it's important to note is that there's overhangs. So as you can see, the 1x4s are going past here. This is going to stick on the outside of the shed for your overhang, and they come in pairs. So the left, it overhangs on the other side. So it's important to have an overhang on each end, and they come in pairs. Roof parts, we're going to have a bag of screws here. They look like this. They're color coded with a washer. We're going to have some tab enclosures for the bottom of the panels that look like this. They come in a bundle. We're going to have some sealant to seal the overlaps, and then we have a roof hanger as an option to install this panel. We're laying out our roof panels and identifying our metal roof parts. We're going to have two people to install this. We have Kevin here on the inside of the ladder. He's going to grab the panel as Jason slides it up on the outside. We had them all measured and laid out in place. So we talked about the overhang. It's important to notice that the overhang, that this rafter, Jason slid it up on the inside here. So this is the gable rafter that we already installed. This comes on the inside, allowing you to put screws in here. The 1x4 overhangs. Kevin has slid the panel up to the peak here and is putting in 3-inch screws. You can put 3-inch screws, the yellow zinc screws, all along this rafter into the gable rafter. More screws is more strength. We're going to use a C-clamp here to pull the bird's mouth tight to the edge of the top plate. Kevin's going to hook it on the inside edge of the top plate on the outside edge of the tail. When he squeezes it together, it's going to pull the bird's mouth tight. It's just a really handy trick. I highly recommend using a clamp. Hold the bird's mouth tight using our clamp. Kevin's going to put a toenail on 45 degrees angle, fastening a 3-inch yellow zinc on angle through the top plate up into this rafter. That's going to hold the bird's mouth now, and he's able to release the clamp. After we got the one side installed, we're going to come to the other side and use the same strategy. Jason's going to lift up it, slide it on the edge using some leverage. Kevin's on the inside of the shed, sliding it up. He's going to pull it up to match this peak here, fastening 3-inch screws. Using the clamp, pull everything tight. More screws is more strength, so feel free to add lots of 3-inch yellow ink screws here. Following the standard instruction manual guide here on how to install the roof panels. After we have one on each side here, we got our toenails in. We're going to add a roof gusset here, and this is our roof gusset detail here. You can see the locations. We're going to install this on the inside towards the shed back wall. This allows the room to put the next panel on. You can use a 3-inch yellow zinc screw. This is all your weight here for the load bearing on the gussets. Add lots of screws, 3 to 4 screws per end. Center, once your roof gusset is installed in center, if you have any extra roof gussets, you can add more and install them. It's extra strength. Work our way down the shed doing the same strategy. We're going to use the sandwich panel now, 46.5 wide, using the same techniques as before. sliding it up, matching to the peak, adding 3-inch screws. Clamp to go hands-free to make it easier to grab your screw gun, and 3-inch screws. We're going to use the C-clamp to pull the bird's mouth tight again, adding the toenail in to hold the rafter.
Pull it down, Jim.
Followed the same steps, working our way down the shed, and we're just installing the final panel. If you find you get to the end and it's fitting a bit tight, you can adjust, or loose, you can adjust your gable framing. It can be installed a little inside, a little less weight, just depending. You want a nice snug fit how we just had. Once we got the roof panels installed, we're going to show you a couple different strategies that you can use to install the metal roof panels. In the manual here, it shows these L brackets, and the purpose of these L brackets is just to temporarily hold them on here. So you can figure out your overhang, how much you want. Just tack a screw in there to hold it, one hanger per each panel. And what this is going to do is just allow the roof to float up here so you can figure out your overlap. The panels are cut to length. You don't have to cut them, but you have to figure out your overlap. And that's the point of these hangers, is to temporarily hold the panels to float on top of the roof for you to figure out your overlap. You can scribe, mark everything out, and then you remove them before installing the panels. There's also another way to do it if you have more space. If you have the yard space, you can lay the panels out on the ground to figure out your overlap, and we'll show you how to do that. We talked about using the L brackets to temporarily install to float the panels to figure out the width. But there's some other options that you can do as well, and we're going to show you those. So you can use the L brackets like the manual, or you can also do what we're doing here. We went ahead and we installed the gable fascia, soffits, and ridge fascia to figure out our width, because these are finishing pieces and then we don't have to do any math this way. So Kevin just used a straight edge here. And the only thing of concern when you're installing this is you need this plane. You want to keep the plane from the roof. You don't want the fascia above it. So you want the fascia to be on the same plane. You just need a straight edge, and you can hold it there and push the fascia up. But by installing the fascia, we don't have to have any math for our overhang. It's all done. Once we installed the gable fascia, the soffit, and the ridge fascia, we've hooked a tape measure on the edge of the gable fascia here, as you can see, and we're going to measure all the way to the other side to get a total length of our shed. So we know our panels then have to be a minimum of that width, and then we're going to add a little extra for overhang. We're going to do about 1 to 2 inches, so just the way the rivets figure out are going to determine the exact amount. The panels are already cut to length. We decided we're going to do 1.5 inches overhang from the ridge here. So we're going to come 1.5 inches this way and about 1 inch or 2 this way, depending on how our overlap works. So if you don't have space to lay your panels out like on the grass or your yard, then you'll have to use the floating hanger hooks, but it's the same idea. It's just that it would be floating on the roof for you to play around to figure out your overlap and overhang. How we've done it is we've taken our measurement and we've just taken a felt pen and we wrote on the panels 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we know the order that they're going in. And then we've added our overhang on the outsides. And we've just made a little black mark here so that when we get it up on the roof, we know that it's these two that have to overlap for our overhang to work. We put it at the top. The ridge cap's going to cover this, so we're not worried about that being exposed. But we're just laying out the panels and marking where the overlap is. We have another one here, as you can see, and it's just so when we get it up on the roof, we know which overlap to match it up to. So once again, we've taken our total width with the gables, fascia on, and we've added, it worked out to 1.25 inches of overhang on each side. So we took this measurement, and it's 1.25 inches longer on this side, and 1.25 inches longer on that side. And that's going to give us a little bit of overhang. and it just looks a little aesthetically better. So the overhang, it doesn't have to be exact, and it might just land where your overlap lands, but anywhere from 1 to 3 inches is an appropriate overhang. It comes down to a personal thing. How much do you want? Do you want extra? Do you want less? Are you concerned about wind? You don't really concerned about it? So the overlap is up for you to determine. This is probably the easiest way because you can lay it on the ground instead of figuring this out on the roof. But if you don't have space, then you have to use the hooks and do it that way. Once we figured out our overlap and our total width, we're going to figure out our length here. You want to get the first panel square because the overlap, it's going to travel. If the first one is on crooked, the others will follow crooked. So my suggestion is we're just doing a quick dry fit. We decided if we match it up to about the top strapping there, the 1x4, it gives us about 1.5 inch overhang down here off the fascia. And we think that about aesthetically looks good. It gives us a little bit of overhang for the water, and it matches the peak here. We don't want it to go past for the ridge cap. So to get the first panel square on, ideally, I'm just going to slide this back. If you have a chalk line and you're a carpenter, you can take a chalk line on this end, measure down from the peak, and do the same from the peak rafter and snap a line, and you have a straight line to follow. Now I understand most of you are probably not carpenters and you don't have a chalk line, so we're going to show you how the do-it-yourselfer does it without. Get the first panel square, which is very important. Have 2 people. Jason on the ground lifted the metal roof panel up to Kevin here at the top. So we know that we decided we're going to have 1.5 inch overhang. So how we check for square without a chalk line, if you don't have one to make a straight line at the peak, we're going to check a few different spots. So we have 1.5 inches here. Okay. 1.5 inches here. It's out a little bit, but that could be the variance of the lumber. We're going to go for 1.25 inches here, and then we'll measure the top again for another 1.25 inches. Okay. And now there's one more spot we want to check. So depending on how well you installed it, your walls could have a slight, curve if they're not perfectly straight. We want to do our best to line it up. So we're going to measure the width. Jason's hooked on the outside of the fascia there, and he's measuring the width. Just to show you guys. Okay, he's hooked on the outside, and he's measuring to the inside of the panel. Okay, after that, they're going to come down and they're going to do it on the bottom now. We want those measurements to be parallel. That's going to tell us if that panel is crooked or not this way. Okay? So once the measurements are equal, and I think this is the best way to square it with a chalk line, is to go by this measurement. It's helpful to check how I showed you here and here. It's a good place to start, but you want to double check for parallel here at the bottom measurement and the top, like how we just showed you. You want those equal. That way we know the panel's not twisted or turned to start. We want it nice and square for the first one. After that, we just tack 2 screws on the top to hold it. Okay, we want to make sure everything is fitting nice before we screw it off. If we go put 20 screws in here and we get to the end and we realize that, hey, we're off a little bit, we have to pull all those screws out. So we're just going to tack 2 screws to hold it, and we're going to install the next panel. Made little marks with a Sharpie so we know where to match up our panel. There's another Sharpie mark on the top where Kevin is. Go ahead, Jason. And that's how we know where the overlap is. We're doing at least two to three rivets for an overlap. Once again, Kevin, you can just match it up. The height here, and you just can tack 1 screw just to hold it. Okay? Are you going to check your measurement again after? So what we're going to do now is we're going to check that measurement. Kevin's just put 2 in to hold it so it doesn't slide down. And once again, he's measuring off the edge of that gable fascia to the inside of this panel here. Top and then bottom. We want it to be parallel. We still have a little bit of play here. Okay? And this is your time to make the adjustments. So we're making sure we stay parallel the whole way. Okay, it looks like the measurements match. We can go to the next one. Once again, we've already marked our overlap. So we just match up our 2 marks. Gonna use the same strategy as before. You can start by just flushing the 2 panels up, tacking a screw on the top. Jason's gonna check for his 1.25 as a loose guide here. Or his 1.5, my apologies. Kevin's gonna put 1 more to hold it. And then we're gonna repeat the process. He's gonna measure to make sure he's staying parallel and he's not starting to twist, right? We don't wanna start twisting and working our way, you know. This is our chance to make adjustments now as we go. And we're making sure we're staying parallel. Okay, so good. We're gonna slide up the final panel on this side. As you can see, everything stayed nice and parallel. We got a nice finish here, an overhang. We're gonna do the same thing. Tack a couple screws to hold it. We're making sure that we're staying nice and parallel and even before we put the final screws down. Okay, they both got the same measurement. So now, as you can see, we got a nice area. No panels are sticking past anywhere. Everything's nice and flush, straight line, overhang is even. We got a nice even overhang here. I'd say we have everything on fitting fairly square, okay? So this is the chance before to screw it off. We want to make sure that things aren't sticking over on an angle that look funny. We want to make sure that no panels are sticking out farther or inside. We have nice straight lines. You've seen how we did that by measuring the parallel as we go. So I think it's safe to say that we have it on there pretty good and we're able to screw down this side. Before doing that, you're going to want to add some sealant here. There could be a couple different brands depending what we have in stock, but basically where these overlap panel goes, we're going to want to fill this sealer in there so that water can't work its way and crawl up. Okay? Every time there's a panel overlap, we need to put this sealer before we do the final screw off. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to place this in and screw it off. And then after that, this side is done. We're going to repeat the exact same steps on the other side before we install the ridge cap. Before fastening the metal roof panels down, I recommend installing the tab enclosure. It have some glue on here and it's sticky, so be careful. If you leave it if you don't screw it all the way on the bottom, it's easier to lift it up and to slide it in there. Once you have it fitted, you can put your screws down and finish. So it's okay to screw off the top, but just leave the bottom open to put your tab enclosures before screwing the bottom portion off. Now that we have the roof on both sides, we're going to install those tab enclosures. Before screwing down the bottom, we can move to the ridge cap. We're going to start installing the ridge cap by putting a little bit of overhang. You can add 1 to 2 inches. We went with 1 inch. It's whatever is aesthetically pleasing to you. It's real simple. You just lay the peak right at the peak. You may have multiple pieces. You're going to want at least a minimum of 6 to 12 inch overlap. I think we provide that, what we cut the lengths to. And on the joints there, you're going to want to seal it prior to screwing it down, just to seal everything in there. And as you can see, there is some strapping here, so you have room for the screws as you install them throughout here to go into that 1x4 backing right there. More screws is just going to give you stronger wind resistance, so we usually try to include lots of screws. So if you have lots of screws, please feel free to use them, or if you're not in a very high wind area, you can save them for future replacement. And that's it. That's our tutorial today. on how to install the metal roof. Thank you, Jason and Kevin. Please like and subscribe if you like these install guides. We can make some more. Comment what you'd like us to see to make us make next. Bye.